They say the most dangerous battlefield is not out there in the world, it's inside your own head. You could be standing in a beautiful place with the sun on your skin and endless opportunity around you and still feel like you're drowning. You can be surrounded by people who believe in you and yet still hear the voice inside your head whispering, "You're not enough." That's the power of the mind. It can be your greatest ally or your deadliest enemy, because nothing kills you faster than your own mind. Not disease, not failure, not heartbreak. It's the silent poison of overthinking, self-doubt, fear, guilt, shame, regret, the invisible war we wage against ourselves every single day. And the truth is, most people lose that war long before they even step into the world. The mind is your greatest ally or your deadliest enemy. This statement holds more power than most people realize, because the reality is, your mind is the filter through which you experience everything in life. It determines how you interpret events, how you feel about yourself, how you see others, and ultimately how you navigate the world. Two people can go through the exact same situation. One walks away stronger, wiser, more determined. The other walks away broken, bitter, and lost. The difference isn't in the situation. The difference is in the mindset. Your mind can be the engine that pushes you toward growth, peace, and strength, or it can be the prison guard that keeps you locked in fear, doubt, and pain. It has the power to create opportunity where others see failure, or to create fear, even when you're surrounded by potential. And what makes it even more dangerous or powerful is that most people are not even aware that their mind is leading them. They don't question the thoughts that arise. They don't challenge the internal dialogue. They simply believe whatever their mind says and act accordingly. And this blind obedience is where the danger lies. Imagine waking up each day with a mind that constantly tells you you're not good enough. Every step you take, every challenge you face, that voice is there. It doesn't yell. It whispers. It doesn't slap you down. It slowly erodes your confidence. And the more you listen to it, the more it becomes your reality. You begin to operate from that belief, and everything you do, from your relationships to your career to your goals, is filtered through that toxic lens. This is how the mind becomes your enemy. It doesn't destroy you all at once. It kills you slowly, with doubt, with fear, with shame, with regret. But flip that, and you can understand just how powerful it is when your mind becomes your ally. When your thoughts are rooted in strength, clarity, and purpose, you become unstoppable. You begin to believe in possibilities that others don't see. You begin to take action even when it's hard. You begin to detach from emotions that no longer serve you. A trained mind tells you, you can do hard things. A trained mind says, failure is just part of the process. A trained mind reminds you, you are not your past. This kind of mindset fuels your progress and keeps you resilient in the face of obstacles. It's the difference between giving up and growing up. The scariest thing is that the same mind that holds the potential for greatness is the same mind that, left unchecked, can completely derail your life. That's why self-awareness is not optional. It's necessary. You have to know when your thoughts are leading you toward destruction. You have to be able to recognize when you're self-sabotaging, when you're feeding a false narrative, when you're acting out of fear rather than truth. Because if you're not aware of it, you're a puppet of your thoughts. And thoughts, especially the negative ones, are powerful manipulators. Your mind is constantly absorbing information, drawing conclusions, building narratives, most of the time without your conscious permission. It draws on past trauma, unhealed wounds, societal programming, and personal insecurities. It reminds you of everything that went wrong and convinces you it will go wrong again. It anchors you to guilt. It traps you in worry. And then it tells you this is just who you are. But that's not who you are. That's who you've been conditioned to be through the unchecked patterns of your thinking. That's why people can have all the talent in the world and still fail. That's why people can be surrounded by love and still feel alone. That's why people can appear successful on the outside but feel empty inside, because the real battle is not external, it's internal. And until you win the war in your mind, nothing on the outside will ever feel secure, fulfilling, or enough. So many people chase change by trying to control their environment, other people, or circumstances, but they neglect the one thing that holds the power to make all the difference: the mind. They try to fix the world outside, but ignore the thoughts inside that are framing everything they see and do. The truth is, your mind is either empowering you or enslaving you. It's either setting you free or keeping you stuck. It's not neutral. It's always working either for you or against you. And the moment you realize that, everything begins to shift. Negative thoughts multiply quickly. They rarely show up alone. They enter quietly, often unnoticed, but once they settle in, they begin to grow roots. What starts as a single doubt can quickly spiral into a full-blown storm inside your mind. A moment of uncertainty becomes hours of anxiety. A passing fear becomes a permanent belief. And before you know it, your entire mindset is hijacked by a narrative that was never meant to define you. That's the destructive power of unchallenged negativity. It doesn't stay small. It expands, and it spreads through every area of your life if you let it. The mind is incredibly efficient at connecting patterns. It's constantly scanning for meaning, for threats, for confirmation. So when you allow a single negative thought to sit unaddressed, your brain will start looking for more evidence to support it. You tell yourself, I'm not good enough, and suddenly your mind starts recalling every moment you failed, every time you were rejected, every comment that made you feel small. And each of these memories reinforces the original thought, giving it weight, giving it substance until it feels like undeniable truth. But the truth is not in the thought. It's in the attention you gave it. Most people don't even notice when the spiral begins. It can start with something as simple as a critical remark from someone, a small mistake, or a missed opportunity. Instead of addressing it logically or letting it go, they dwell, they overthink, they internalize. The thought doesn't pass through, it takes over. And the more you dwell on it, the more your brain strengthens the neural pathways associated with that emotion. This is how anxiety builds. This is how insecurity develops. And this is how self-doubt becomes a lifestyle, not just a moment. When negative thoughts take over, they don't just affect how you feel, they affect how you act. They dictate your choices. You start to play small. You stop trying. You avoid challenges. You don't take the risks you need to grow. Why? Because your mind has already convinced you it's not worth it, that you'll fail, that you don't have what it takes, that others are better. And slowly, without even realizing it, your life begins to shrink to the size of your fear. You start living from limitation instead of from potential. And the worst part, it all began with a single thought you didn't confront. Negativity is like a weed. It doesn't need much to grow. It thrives in neglect. If you don't actively pull it out, it will overrun the entire garden of your mind. That's why awareness is critical. You have to be vigilant with your thoughts. Not everything your mind tells you is true. In fact, much of it is old programming, trauma, or insecurity disguising itself as logic. And if you don't stop to question it, you'll end up living in a reality that was built on lies. The longer those lies go unchecked, the more real they begin to feel. People often think that confidence and peace come from achievements or external validation, but real mental strength begins with mastering your inner dialogue. The person who can notice a negative thought and say, this isn't who I am, this is just a thought, has more power than someone who appears successful, but is a slave to their inner critic. Because when you let negativity multiply, it doesn't just cloud your mind, it distorts your identity. You forget who you really are. You see yourself through the lens of every fear, every failure, every wound. And that becomes your operating system. The truth is, you can't stop negative thoughts from entering your mind altogether. They're a part of being human, but you can control what you do with them. You can choose whether to water them or to let them wither. You can decide if that thought gets to stay or if it needs to be replaced. Most people wait until they're overwhelmed, anxious, or completely burnt out before they start addressing the root cause. But by then, the damage has already been done. The momentum of negativity has already shaped their behaviors, their habits, their relationships, and their sense of self-worth. It takes practice to challenge your thoughts. It takes self-awareness to realize when you're spiraling. But most of all, it takes discipline, because the easy thing to do is to let your mind run wild. The hard thing is to slow down and confront what's actually going on inside. It's not always comfortable, it's not always convenient, but it's necessary, because the cost of letting negativity multiply unchecked is far greater than the effort it takes to stop it in its tracks. Your perception shapes your reality. That's not just a motivational quote, it's a psychological fact that governs how you experience every single aspect of your life. The way you interpret what happens to you, the meaning you assign to events, and the beliefs you hold about yourself and others all form the lens through which you view the world. And that lens either empowers you or imprisons you. Two people can face the exact same challenge. One sees a lesson, the other sees a curse. One becomes stronger, the other becomes stuck. The difference isn't in the event, it's in how the event is perceived. Your perception is built on thoughts, beliefs, and patterns you've developed over time. If your thoughts are consistently negative, fearful, or self-critical, then your perception will be clouded with doubt and defeat. You'll see problems instead of opportunities, threats instead of chances, enemies instead of allies. Life will feel like a battlefield even when it isn't. You'll read rejection in silence, insult in feedback, and failure in every stumble. But none of that is objective truth. It's your mind assigning meaning based on the way you perceive the world. Most people think they're responding to reality, but they're not. They're responding to the story they've told themselves about reality. If you believe the world is unfair, you'll find unfairness in every corner. If you believe you're unlovable, you'll question every compliment and sabotage every relationship. If you believe you're destined to fail, you won't try, and even when you succeed, you'll find a way to discredit it. It's not life that's holding you back. It's the lens you're looking through. That's how perception becomes a cage. It convinces you that what you see is all there is. Your perception also influences how you see yourself. And that internal image becomes the foundation for your self-worth, your confidence, and your ability to take action. If you see yourself as a victim, you'll act helpless. If you see yourself as broken, you'll expect rejection. If you see yourself as unworthy, you'll settle for less than you deserve. These beliefs become self-fulfilling prophecies. You behave in ways that confirm what you already believe, reinforcing the perception and creating a cycle that becomes harder to break the longer it continues. What's dangerous is how subtle it all is. You might not even realize your perception is skewed. You might believe your inner narrative is reality, not realizing it's been shaped by past wounds, disappointments, and fears. And because perception feels so real, you never stop to question whether it's actually true. You just react, you defend, you avoid, and you end up living a version of life that's far smaller than what's actually possible for you. All because the filter through which you view the world has never been cleaned. Changing your perception starts with changing your thoughts. You have to become conscious of what you're telling yourself, especially in moments of stress, uncertainty, or failure. Are you assuming the worst? Are you labeling yourself or others unfairly? Are you jumping to conclusions that feed your fears instead of your growth? These are the questions that bring awareness. And awareness is what allows you to challenge the falsehoods in your perception and choose a different lens. A lens that sees opportunity instead of disaster, growth instead of loss, strength instead of weakness. This isn't about pretending everything is fine or ignoring reality. It's about choosing the most empowering interpretation of reality. You can face hardship and still believe it will grow you. You can make mistakes and still believe in your ability to improve. You can experience rejection and still know your worth. That shift in perception changes everything, not just how you feel, but how you act. And how you act determines your results. So the chain reaction starts in your mind. Perception is the birthplace of your emotions. If you perceive something as threatening, your body will respond with stress, anxiety, and fear. If you perceive it as an opportunity, your body responds with energy, motivation, and excitement. The external trigger didn't change, your interpretation did. That's why two people can walk into the same room and have completely different experiences. It's not the room. It's not the people. It's the meaning they assign to what's happening. When you take control of your perception, you take control of your reality, not because you're changing the world outside, but because you're changing the way you experience it. And that change makes all the difference in how far you go, how you feel, and who you become. The stories you tell yourself shape the life you live. Most people don't even realize how powerful their inner narrative is, how deeply it influences their behavior, emotions, and identity. You wake up each day and carry around a story that either lifts you or limits you. That story tells you who you are, what you can do, what you're worth, and what kind of future is possible for you. And the longer you repeat that story, the more it becomes your truth, even if it was never based on reality to begin with. You live inside the frame your mind builds, and that frame can be a window to growth or a box of limitations. It often begins in childhood or during moments of trauma or failure. Something happens, and instead of processing it as an isolated incident, you assign meaning to it. You fail once, and the story becomes, I'm not good enough. Someone rejects you, and the story becomes, I'm unlovable. You make a mistake, and the story becomes, I'll never succeed. These stories aren't facts. They're emotional conclusions wrapped in fear and shame, yet you begin to live by them as if they are law. You stop trying new things, you settle for less, you hold back, all because the story in your head tells you that you're not ready, not worthy, not capable. The most dangerous part is that these stories often operate in the background of your mind, like invisible scripts. You don't even realize they're running the show. You just feel stuck. You keep repeating the same patterns in relationships and work and self-sabotage, and you don't know why. You blame circumstances, other people, bad luck, but the real issue is internal. It's the story you've allowed to take root and go unchallenged for years. It's the quiet voice that shows up every time you dare to step outside your comfort zone and whispers, you can't do this. It's the memory you keep replaying when you're about to grow, reminding you of the last time you failed. People often wait for external validation to rewrite their internal story. They think if they just succeed, get the relationship, reach the goal, then they'll finally feel different. But it doesn't work like that. If your story is broken, you'll reject even the good things that come into your life. You'll question the love, sabotage the success, and doubt every opportunity, because your story won't allow you to believe you deserve it. You can't receive what you don't think you're worthy of. You'll either push it away or ruin it just to stay aligned with the narrative you've accepted as truth. Changing the story isn't easy. It takes intentional effort and brutal honesty. You have to be willing to confront the lies you've been living with and ask yourself where they came from. Who told you that you weren't enough? Was it someone else? Or was it a conclusion you drew in a moment of pain? Is it still true? Or have you outgrown it and just never updated the script? You have to unlearn what the wounded version of you once believed. You have to speak truth to the voice that's been lying to you, sometimes for decades. Rewriting your story doesn't mean ignoring the pain or pretending everything is perfect. It means owning your experiences without letting them define your identity. It means choosing a narrative that empowers you rather than enslaves you. You can say, yes, I failed, but I'm not a failure. You can say, yes, they left, but I'm still worthy of love. You can say, yes, I've been broken, but I'm not beyond repair. That shift in language is powerful. It moves you from victimhood to victory, from passive observer to active creator. When you begin to tell yourself a better story, your life begins to follow that direction. You start showing up differently. You take more risks. You love more freely. You pursue things that once felt out of reach. And most importantly, you stop shrinking to fit the lies you once believed. You give yourself permission to expand, to evolve, to grow, because the story has changed. And when the story changes, everything else does too. Your mindset, your relationships, your future, it all rises to meet the level of the story you've chosen to live by. Fear is not just an emotion, it's a mental cage. It disguises itself as protection, but more often it becomes a prison. The fear of failure, the fear of rejection, the fear of judgment, these are not just passing thoughts. They're chains that keep people stuck in places they don't belong. Fear will convince you to stay quiet when you need to speak, to play small when you're built for more, and to walk away when you should be stepping up. And the more you listen to it, the more it becomes your master. It starts small, a hesitation, a doubt, but soon it becomes the deciding voice in every choice you make. The worst part is that fear doesn't just stop you from doing things. It convinces you not to even try. It shows you every possible way things could go wrong before you take a single step. You imagine the failure before you begin. You picture the embarrassment before you even speak. You feel the weight of regret before the opportunity has even passed. And in doing so, fear robs you of experiences that could have shaped you, grown you, or even changed your life. It's not the failure itself that hurts the most. It's the life unlived because you allowed fear to lead. Fear thrives in the unknown. And since life is filled with uncertainty, the fearful mind never feels safe. It always finds something to worry about, something to avoid, some reason to stay where it's comfortable. But comfort is rarely the place where growth happens. The comfort zone might feel safe, but over time, it becomes suffocating. You can't grow in a space where you're always avoiding discomfort. You can't become who you're meant to be while constantly trying to stay who you've always been. But fear tells you otherwise. It says, don't change, it's risky. It says, stay here, at least you know what to expect. It's not trying to destroy you. It thinks it's protecting you. But in doing so, it ends up killing your progress. The mind is incredibly skilled at justifying fear. It will dress it up as logic. It will give you a list of rational reasons why you shouldn't do something, why the timing's wrong, why you're not ready, why someone else would do it better. But deep down, you know it's not logic speaking. It's fear pretending to be wisdom. And the more you listen to it, the more you strengthen it. Every time you choose fear, you make it stronger. Every time you back down from a challenge, you tell fear, you're right, I can't handle this. And over time, your confidence erodes, not because you lack ability, but because you haven't been using it. Everyone feels fear. The difference between those who succeed and those who stay stuck isn't the absence of fear. It's how they respond to it. Courage isn't the lack of fear. It's doing the thing anyway. It's feeling the nerves, the doubt, the anxiety, and still taking the step. You don't overcome fear by thinking your way out of it. You overcome fear by acting your way through it. You do the thing scared. You speak with your voice shaking. You move with your knees trembling. And with each step forward, fear loses just a little more of its grip. Fear also feeds on imagination. The mind will create entire scenarios that don't exist and might never happen. It's the what ifs that paralyze you. What if I fail? What if I look stupid? What if they don't like me? But what if you succeed? What if this is the moment that changes everything? What if you're stronger than you think? You'll never know unless you move through it. That's the truth fear doesn't want you to discover. Once you face it, it loses its power. Once you move, you realize it wasn't the monster it claimed to be. You owe it to yourself to not let fear make your decisions. You owe it to your future to not let fear dictate your direction. Because every time you surrender to fear, you're choosing a smaller life. You're choosing regret over risk. And while risk might hurt, regret cuts deeper. At the end of the day, you won't remember every failure, but you will remember the chances you never took, the love you didn't express, the dreams you didn't chase, And all because fear was sitting in the driver's seat. The moment you take the wheel back, the moment you stop letting fear be the loudest voice in the room, everything begins to change. You begin to live, not just exist. You begin to lead, not just follow. And you begin to become, not just survive. Self-doubt is a silent killer. It doesn't scream or show up all at once. It whispers in the back of your mind, questioning every decision you make and every step you take. It tells you you're not good enough, not smart enough, not talented enough. It takes your dreams and drowns them in hesitation. And because it sounds like your own voice, you believe it. You begin to second guess your abilities, downplay your potential, and shrink your goals to match your fear. You stop applying, stop reaching, stop trying, not because you can't, but because a voice inside told you that you shouldn't. What makes self-doubt so dangerous is how sneaky it is. It often disguises itself as humility or caution. You might tell yourself you're just being realistic or avoiding disappointment, but what you're really doing is protecting yourself from the possibility of failure by never fully showing up. You play small so no one will expect too much from you. You keep your head down so you won't risk judgment. And all the while, your talents, gifts, and potential stay buried under layers of hesitation. You're not hiding from the world, you're hiding from yourself. This kind of self-imposed limitation becomes a pattern. Every time you doubt yourself, you hesitate. And every time you hesitate, you miss an opportunity. Those missed opportunities then reinforce your belief that you're not capable. And so the cycle continues. You start collecting evidence for your self-doubt. Every mistake, every rejection, every time someone else was chosen instead of you. But what you don't realize is that you're also ignoring the evidence that proves you're more than enough. The wins you downplayed, the compliments you dismissed, the times you succeeded but didn't let yourself celebrate. You feed the doubt while starving your confidence. Self-doubt can stem from many sources. Past failures, childhood criticism, unmet expectations. But regardless of where it starts, it grows when you don't challenge it. If you never question the voice in your head, it becomes louder and more convincing. It will talk you out of every new idea before it has a chance to breathe. It will convince you that other people have something you don't, that you're too late, too flawed, too far behind. But none of that is truth. It's just fear wearing the mask of logic. And the more you listen to it, the more you become a prisoner of your own mind. The tragedy of self-doubt is not that it keeps you from doing impossible things. It keeps you from doing the things that are well within your reach. It keeps you from speaking up when you know the answer. It keeps you from starting the business, writing the book, auditioning for the role, applying for the job. It keeps you quiet when your soul is screaming to be heard. And as time passes, the cost becomes heavier because the longer you wait, the harder it becomes to believe in yourself again. Not because your potential has faded, but because your trust in yourself has eroded. Breaking free from self-doubt doesn't mean you'll never feel uncertain again. It means you stop letting uncertainty stop you. You start acting in spite of it. You take the leap even when your mind tries to pull you back. You replace the old questions, what if I fail, with better ones, what if I fly? You recognize that courage isn't the absence of self-doubt. It's the decision to move anyway. And the more you move, the more evidence you create that you can be trusted, that you are capable, that the doubt was never the truth, it was just the obstacle. Confidence isn't something you wait to feel, it's something you build. It comes from doing hard things, showing up consistently and refusing to let fear write your story. It comes from making decisions and owning the results, whether they're wins or lessons. Every time you take action in the face of doubt, you take a piece of your power back. You start to rewrite the narrative. You begin to remember who you were before the world told you to play it safe. And in that remembering, you find your fire again. The truth is, the world needs what you've been hiding, your voice, your gifts, your ideas. But it starts with you giving yourself permission to show up imperfectly, to try, to stumble, to learn. Because confidence grows in the doing, not the waiting. And every step forward is a vote of trust in yourself, a message to your mind that you are ready, even if the doubt hasn't caught up yet. That's how you break the chains. Not by waiting for the doubt to go away, but by proving it wrong one bold step at a time. Comparison is one of the most destructive habits the mind can fall into, and it's more common than most people realize. In a world dominated by highlight reels, curated success stories, and filtered perfection, it has become incredibly easy to measure yourself against others and come up short. You scroll through social media and see someone with the job you want, the body you wish you had, the relationship you crave, or the lifestyle you dream of. And without even thinking, you begin to internalize the message that you're behind, that you're not doing enough, that you are somehow less than. The more you compare, the more inadequate you feel, and the less capable you believe yourself to be. This comparison doesn't inspire you. It paralyzes you. It doesn't drive action. It breeds shame. It makes you question your own path and diminishes the value of your progress. You begin to overlook your growth because it doesn't look like someone else's. You dismiss your strengths because they don't match someone else's achievements. And over time, you develop this toxic mental narrative that you're not measuring up, that you're not as successful, attractive. The tragedy is that this story doesn't come from truth, it comes from illusion. You're comparing your behind the scenes to someone else's carefully chosen front stage moment. Comparison steals your joy, not just because it makes you feel worse, but because it robs you of presence. You stop appreciating where you are because you're obsessed with where someone else is. You miss the beauty of your own journey because you're fixated on someone else's destination. It creates a constant sense of lack. Even when you have plenty, you could have made incredible strides, overcome real obstacles, achieved meaningful wins, but they no longer feel like enough because your mind is too busy keeping score on someone else's scoreboard, and in doing so, you ignore your own game. What people rarely realize is that comparison is deeply unfair because it never accounts for context. You don't see the sacrifices, the pain, the hours, or the struggle behind someone else's success. You see the polished result, but not the messy process. You see the applause, but not the silence they endured before anyone noticed them. You see the strength, but not the seasons of weakness that forged it. And yet you measure your worth against their outcome. You hold your chapter 3 up to their chapter 20 and wonder why it doesn't look the same. The mind convinces you that you're failing, when in reality, you're simply on a different timeline. This kind of mental trap also leads to resentment toward others and toward yourself. You begin to resent people for having what you want, and you start resenting yourself for not having it. It's a breeding ground for bitterness, and it poisons your mindset. Instead of cheering others on or being inspired by their success, you feel threatened. Instead of using their stories as proof of what's possible, you use them as proof of your own inadequacy. And once that bitterness takes root, it becomes even harder to focus on your own growth because you're no longer running your race, you're watching theirs with envy in your heart and doubt in your steps. The only real way to escape the comparison trap is to reconnect with your own path. You have to get brutally honest about what you truly want. Not what looks good to others, not what earns the most praise, but what sets your soul on fire. When you know your purpose, you stop needing to measure it against someone else's. You understand that your race is unique, that your calling is not a competition, and that your success can never be based on someone else's definition. You start to appreciate the slow seasons, the quiet wins, the internal victories that no one else sees, but that matter deeply to you. It takes discipline to redirect your focus back to yourself. It takes intention to silence the noise and ground yourself in gratitude. You have to train your mind to celebrate others without questioning your own value. You have to remind yourself that there's no finish line, no trophy for being first, no universal checklist for living a worthy life. There's only your growth, your integrity, your alignment with what truly matters to you. And once you begin honoring that, comparison begins to fade, not because the temptation disappears, but because you're too focused on building your own life to worry about how someone else is building theirs. Comparison is a mental habit that kills joy, confidence, and creativity. It turns life into a contest instead of a journey. But when you pull your mind out of that loop and root yourself in authenticity, you find peace. You find motivation that's grounded in purpose, not pressure. And you find the freedom to grow without needing to outshine anyone else. Because the only person you were ever meant to compete with is the person you were yesterday. Overthinking is the mind's version of quicksand. It pulls you in deeper the more you struggle with it. It's the endless replaying of conversations, the obsessive analyzing of situations, and the mental rehearsing of outcomes that may never happen. At first, it feels like control. You convince yourself that by thinking through every detail, you're preparing yourself, protecting yourself. But in reality, you're trapping yourself in a cycle of mental paralysis. You delay decisions, avoid action, and second guess even your best instincts because your mind is too busy examining every what if scenario that could possibly go wrong. Overthinking doesn't solve problems. It magnifies them. It takes a small worry and inflates it into something massive. It turns simple tasks into overwhelming burdens and creates stress where there doesn't need to be any. What's worse is that it feeds off of itself. The more you think, the more confused you become, the more you feel the need to keep thinking. And round you go, spiraling in your own thoughts until clarity is nowhere to be found. You begin to doubt your ability to make choices. You look for answers outside yourself, constantly seeking reassurance, yet never feeling satisfied with what you hear. This endless cycle eats away at your peace and your confidence. You begin to question your instincts. You wait for the perfect moment that never arrives. You hesitate to commit because you want certainty where none exists. But the truth is, clarity rarely comes before action. It comes from action. You don't gain certainty by overanalyzing the possibilities. You gain it by stepping forward, trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again. Overthinking keeps you stuck in place, convincing you that thinking more will protect you from mistakes, when in fact, the fear of making mistakes is the very thing keeping you from progress. Overthinking also has a way of rewriting reality. It makes you read into people's words and tone, interpreting silence as rejection or indifference. It makes you believe that if you don't figure out the right way to act, speak, or respond, everything will fall apart. You begin to carry conversations with you long after they've ended, dissecting every word, imagining how you could have said it better, wondering how the other person received it. And all the while, the present moment slips away. The opportunity to live, to breathe, to simply exist without judgment becomes buried beneath the weight of constant internal noise. One of the most damaging aspects of overthinking is how much energy it drains. Your mental bandwidth is consumed by thought loops, and you're left too exhausted to actually take action. You might spend hours thinking about what you should do, only to do nothing. You might plan your life down to the smallest detail, but never execute any of it. You wear yourself out mentally while your real life remains unchanged. And with each day that passes like this, frustration builds. You know you're capable of more, but you can't seem to move forward. Not because the path is blocked, but because your mind won't let you walk it. The solution isn't to eliminate thought. It's to change your relationship with thought. You must recognize when your thinking has become unproductive, when it's no longer serving you, but simply looping. You have to learn to interrupt the pattern. Sometimes that means taking immediate action, even when it feels uncomfortable. Sometimes it means setting limits, telling yourself, I'll think about this for 10 minutes, then make a choice. Sometimes it means grounding yourself in your body through movement, breath, or nature, pulling your awareness out of your head and into the present. The goal isn't to stop thinking, but to stop getting lost in thought. You also need to rebuild your trust in yourself. Overthinking often stems from the belief that you can't handle what might go wrong. But you've already survived hard things. You've already made tough choices and grown through difficult moments. You don't need to predict every outcome. You just need to know you'll figure it out if and when it happens. That's real confidence. That's resilience. And that mindset will carry you further than any amount of over-preparation ever could. When you stop overthinking, you free yourself. You create space for clarity, for creativity, for courage. You begin to live in the moment instead of fearing the future. You start to trust your instincts again, to make decisions with confidence, to move with purpose. You realize that life isn't meant to be perfectly planned. It's meant to be lived. And the best way to honor your life is not by thinking about it endlessly, but by showing up for it fully, one bold, imperfect step at a time. Your internal dialogue, the way you speak to yourself when no one else is listening, has more power over your life than almost anything else. It's the constant voice narrating your experiences, shaping your beliefs, interpreting your failures, and determining your worth. If that voice is negative, critical, and harsh, it can destroy your confidence before the world even gets a chance to. It can become the invisible enemy within you, planting seeds of doubt, guilt, fear, and shame that quietly grow into deeply rooted insecurities. The danger is that the world might never see this battle, but it rages on silently inside you, affecting every decision you make and every dream you dare to pursue. Negative self-talk doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers just enough to make you hesitate. It tells you you're not smart enough to apply for that opportunity. It makes you second-guess the compliment you just received. It convinces you that your voice doesn't matter, that your goals are too far out of reach, that you're somehow not good enough. And because it sounds like your own voice, you believe it. You begin to accept its lies as facts, and soon your self-impingement is built not on truth, but on internalized criticism and assumptions that were never challenged. This mental habit becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The more you tell yourself you're not capable, the less likely you are to take risks or try new things. The more you repeat that you're unattractive, unworthy, or unwanted, the more you retreat from people and miss chances for connection. You begin to shrink your life to fit the version of yourself you've created in your head, and eventually your reality starts to reflect those limits, not because they're real, but because you've let them become real through repetition, belief, and inaction. Your life becomes small, not by accident, but by mental design. Many people don't even realize they're doing this. They've been talking down to themselves for so long that it feels normal. The voice that tells them they're stupid when they make a mistake or unlovable when they feel rejected feels like a part of them, but it's not. That voice was learned. It came from past experiences, maybe from critical parents, harsh teachers, toxic relationships, or traumatic failures. Somewhere along the way, you absorbed those messages and made them your internal narrative. But just because that voice is familiar doesn't mean it's true, and it certainly doesn't mean it has to stay. The first step to breaking free from negative self-talk is awareness. You have to start noticing the words you use when you talk to yourself. Would you speak that way to someone you love? Would you use that same tone with a child, a friend, or a stranger going through a hard time? If the answer is no, then why speak that way to yourself? You deserve kindness, patience, and understanding just as much as anyone else. And you have to begin replacing those harsh judgments with words that uplift, empower, and support you, even when things go wrong. Rewriting your internal dialogue isn't about pretending everything is perfect or never being honest with yourself. It's about being constructive instead of destructive. Instead of saying, I'm such a failure, you say, that didn't work out, but I'm learning. Instead of I'm ugly, you say I'm more than my appearance and I'm working on self-love. Instead of I can't do this, you say this is hard, but I'll figure it out. These may sound like small shifts, but they're powerful. Over time, they change the way you feel about yourself. They build inner resilience, foster self-respect, and open you up to the possibilities that negative self-talk would have shut down. When your internal dialogue becomes your ally instead of your enemy, everything changes. You begin to back yourself. You're able to show up in the world with quiet confidence, not because you think you're perfect, but because you know you're worthy. You're no longer at the mercy of your worst thoughts. You're no longer feeding the fear that once held you back. And even when life throws challenges your way, you can face them with a mind that encourages you, not one that tears you down. The mind is incredibly powerful, but it's also programmable. If it can be conditioned to believe negativity, it can also be reconditioned to speak with compassion. It starts with catching the voice, challenging it, and changing it again and again until new patterns are formed. It takes work, consistency, and patience, but it's one of the most transformative things you'll ever do, because the way you speak to yourself doesn't just shape your thoughts, it shapes your future. And if you want to live fully, boldly, and peacefully, then your inner voice must become your strongest supporter, not your biggest critic. Living in the past is like trying to drive forward while staring into the rearview mirror. You lose sight of where you're going because you're too focused on where you've been. It's one of the most silent killers of growth, ambition, and peace. Your mind traps you in moments that no longer exist, but your emotions respond as if they're still happening. You replay conversations, regrets, mistakes, and lost opportunities like old recordings that never get turned off. It starts to feel like your life is just a cycle of what ifs and should haves. But no matter how much you dwell on yesterday, it won't change what happened. It only steals your ability to embrace today. People often live in the past because it's familiar. Even if it's painful, it gives them something to hold on to. They use their past failures as evidence that they're not capable. They cling to heartbreaks as reasons to guard themselves forever. They wear old mistakes like shackles, thinking they need to constantly be reminded of their flaws in order to become better. But healing doesn't come from punishment. It comes from release. It comes from accepting that the past happened, that it shaped you, and that it doesn't define you anymore. When you live in the past, you hand over your present power to moments that can no longer be changed. One of the most destructive effects of living in the past is how it clouds your judgment about who you are. Maybe you failed before, but that doesn't mean you're a failure. Maybe someone walked away, but that doesn't mean you're unlovable. Yet the mind keeps dragging those old files to the surface, replaying the same emotional narrative until you start to believe that your past is your identity. And when that happens, you stop taking chances. You stop believing in new beginnings. You expect pain, loss, and disappointment before anything even happens, because you've trained your mind to believe that the future will always mirror the past. But the truth is, the past only holds power when you give it power. You don't owe your past an explanation, and you certainly don't owe it your present peace. The pain may have taught you something, but it was never meant to become your permanent home. Carry the lesson, not the weight. Use the memory, not the wound. You have to become aware of when your thoughts are drifting back and learn how to redirect them. Because while your body lives in the present, your mind can time travel, and it often chooses the worst destinations if left unchecked. Living in the past also feeds anxiety and depression. You feel anxious because you're constantly afraid the past will repeat itself. You feel depressed because you're stuck mourning something that's already gone. It could be a broken relationship, a lost opportunity, a childhood wound, or a wrong decision. And while grieving and reflection are normal, staying stuck in them isn't. There is a difference between remembering and reliving. Remembering allows you to reflect and grow. Reliving keeps you trapped and broken. You can't change what you refuse to release, and you can't move forward when your mind is still anchored behind you. The freedom you're searching for doesn't come from fixing the past. It comes from forgiving it. Forgiving the people who hurt you, the choices you made, and even the time you feel you've wasted. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or condoning. It means deciding that your healing matters more than your resentment. It means recognizing that you are not the same person you were then, and you deserve a life that reflects who you are now. And every time you choose to live in the present instead of the past, you reclaim a piece of yourself that you gave away. It's also important to recognize that the past is often distorted by emotion. What you remember may not be the full picture. Your mind filters it through pain, fear, guilt, and regret. So what you're holding on to may not even be real. It may be an exaggerated version your brain created in an effort to protect you. But that protection becomes a prison when it stops you from trying again, from loving again, from trusting again. You have to be willing to question those memories, to challenge the story they've written about who you are and what you're capable of becoming. You are not the sum of your mistakes, your rejections, or your heartbreaks. You are the sum of the strength you've built, the lessons you've learned, and the courage you continue to show. Every day you wake up is a new chapter. You don't have to keep rereading the same page. The past was a teacher, not a jailer. Let it teach you, then let it go. Your future is waiting, but it can only meet you where you are, not where. So when your mind tries to drag you back, remind yourself that the only way to live fully is to be present fully. Your life is happening now, not then. And you deserve to experience it with open eyes, not through the lens of everything you've already been through. The fear of judgment is one of the most invisible chains that bind people to a life of silence, hesitation, and inauthenticity. It starts with the subtle need to fit in, to be accepted, to avoid criticism, but over time it evolves into a full-blown fear that can dominate every area of your life. You begin to second-guess every word you say, every step you take, every choice you make. You start to live through the imagined lens of others, as if the world is constantly watching and evaluating your every move. This constant self-monitoring leads to paralysis, mental, emotional, and spiritual. The fear of what others might think becomes more important than what you actually want or believe. And before long, you find yourself living a life that isn't yours, but one that's carefully edited to avoid disapproval. It doesn't take long for this fear to evolve into self-censorship. You hold back your ideas in meetings, not because they aren't good, but because you're scared they might sound silly. You avoid wearing what you love, saying what you feel, or doing what excites you because someone, somewhere might not approve. You overthink every post you make, every expression you share, fearing it might attract criticism. And yet, the irony is this: no matter how carefully you craft your image to please everyone, someone will still misunderstand you, dislike you, or judge you. So you suffer in silence, trying to earn a kind of safety that doesn't even exist. The fear of judgment becomes a wall between you and your potential, and that wall grows taller the more you feed it. At the root of this fear lies the belief that other people's opinions determine your value. But the truth is, what people think about you is none of your business. Their perceptions are filtered through their own biases, insecurities, and experiences. You could be the kindest, smartest, most well-intentioned person on the planet and still be judged unfairly by someone. That's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of them. Yet when your mind is constantly seeking validation, you forget that. You allow their opinion to override your own truth, and you shrink yourself just to make others more comfortable. This fear also kills creativity and expression. You can't be truly creative when you're obsessed with being accepted. Creativity demands risk, vulnerability, and the courage to stand alone if necessary. But fear makes you play it safe, color inside the lines, and mimic what others have already done. And that's not where magic happens. The world doesn't need more people who are polished and perfect. It needs more people who are real, bold, and unafraid to stand in their uniqueness. But to get there, you have to confront the fear of judgment and make a decision that your voice matters more than their approval. What's worse is that the fear of judgment doesn't only stop you from acting, it makes you harsh toward yourself and others. You become your own worst critic, anticipating every possible judgment and preemptively attacking yourself before someone else can. You may also start projecting that judgment onto others, silently criticizing them just to soothe your own insecurity. It becomes a cycle of fear, shame, and control, but none of it brings peace. It only deepens the prison you're living in, where every move feels like a performance and every failure feels like a public disgrace. Freedom comes when you realize that no one's opinion of you can define your truth. You are not on this earth to be universally understood. You are here to live, to grow, to experience, and to be yourself, even if that self is misunderstood. The moment you begin living for your own values, goals, and standards, you take your power back. It doesn't mean you'll never feel fear, but it means you'll stop letting that fear make your choices for you. You'll start speaking even when your voice shakes. You'll take the risk even if someone rolls their eyes. You'll honor your intuition, your style, your identity, because you finally understand that being judged is inevitable, but being real is optional, and you're choosing real. You'll also find that the people who truly matter, the ones who respect you, love you, and value your authenticity, will be drawn to you not in spite of your courage, but because of it. You'll attract truth by being truthful, and those who were only in your life to validate a false version of you will naturally fall away. And that's okay, because in the end, the cost of trying to be liked by everyone is far greater than the risk of being your true self. You'll discover a deeper peace in being real, even when it's uncomfortable, than in being accepted for something you're not. The judgment will come either way. But when you stop fearing it, you finally start living. If you don't master your mind, it will master you. It will tell you you're too late, that your best days are behind you, that it's safer to stay where you are, that there's no point in dreaming anymore. And if you listen, it will be right. But if you challenge it, if you stand up to it, if you start feeding it power instead of fear, everything changes. Because the truth is, the enemy was never out there. It was always inside. But now, and once you know, you can never go back. Start today. Train your mind, feed it truth, speak life over yourself, because nothing kills you faster than your own mind. And nothing can resurrect your life more powerfully than mastering it.